Welcome to Teaching Through the Bible as we begin talking about the sacrifices that Leviticus instructs in the Old Testament. So remember, the issue here is that God is holy, He's set apart, He's perfect, and we're not. So we need a solution for that. And Leviticus is giving an indication as to what that is. I told last time kind of how this is instruction manuals, essentially. I have that written up here so you can kind of see where each of these things begins and ends. We're going to be, of course, in that first section on this first day in with sacrifices. So first number of chapters are on sacrifices. We're just going to look at one of them today. The whole burnt offering is what it's normally called. Now, before we get quite into that, I just want to note on the reason we need this is because we don't match up. We aren't good enough. And there can be a lot of pushback on that because you may think, yeah, I mean, okay, I'm not like perfect, but like I'm pretty good. You may think, well, I mean, I haven't. Go look at the Ten Commandments. I haven't murdered. I haven't stolen. I haven't, like you can say, I haven't done a lot of the bad stuff that a lot of people have done. And, yeah, sure, that may be true. Maybe relative to other mere humans, maybe you are pretty good. But that's not the point. That's the whole thing, is it's relative to God. Because God, since He is sinless, He's perfect, He can't be around sin. That's why being holy means He can't be around sin. So it doesn't mean He can't be around a lot of sin. It doesn't mean He has to be around only people who are like less than 50% sin or something like that. Who do more good things than bad things. That's not what it means. The standard is something that's higher than any of us can achieve. It would be like me trying to go play in the NFL. As far as if I'm thinking, maybe I can do this, right? And I realize, nope, I can't. Even if I'm maybe between me and all my brothers, or even if it was me and all my friends, maybe I'm the best, in high school, and I'm the best football player in town. That doesn't mean that I'm going to make it to the NFL. There's a standard there that I'm not going to achieve. Now, you may say, well, yeah, maybe I sin, but like sometimes I can't help it. Or you may realize, hey, Adam is the one at the very beginning in the Garden of Eden who screwed all this up, and he's the one who caused sin to come in the world, so that's not my fault. And that would be as if I were to go to the NFL and say, I would like to be on one of your teams here, put me in the draft, and they said, well, you're not going to make the cut. Look, you're not tall enough, you're not big enough, you're not fast enough. And now, even if I had been working, day in, day out, exercising, doing everything I could to be as strong and fast and everything as I could, if I don't make the cut, I don't make the cut. It doesn't help to say, no. But I can join the NFL because it's not my fault that I have these genes that, biologically, I mean, I have worked so hard. This is as strong as I could possibly be right now. This is as fast as I could possibly go right now. I have been working really hard and doing the best that I can. So I think I can be in the NFL. And that's not going to be a convincing argument. Now, of course, with the NFL, you do have people that do make that cut. Right, you do have that standard where there are people who are good enough, and by definition, it's kind of different. The analogy kind of breaks down at that point, but hopefully you see the point of this, where God is separate and He has a standard that only He meets, and that's why we need Jesus. He has to be away from sin. Sin cannot be with Him, and fortunately, He does give us a solution, and that's Jesus. And that's where these sacrifices are going to point to. And so it's just really important to understand, like, we're worse than we think we are. We're lower on that list of how good we are, how bad we are than we think we are. And God is greater up there than we think he is. There's a much bigger gap than you probably realize. But that just makes what Jesus does all the more amazing. The fact that there's not this little gap, and like, well, God's maybe right here, and I'm not quite there. I'm not quite perfect, but and Jesus kind of like gets me the little bit left. Like the gap is huge. The gap is huge, and Jesus bridges that gap for us. And so it's just more amazing what he's done. We can appreciate even more when we actually admit and realize, oh, we are pretty bad. And God is way beyond what we could ever be, and his standard is way beyond what we could ever accomplish. The more you realize that, the more you realize how bad you are and how great God is, the more you realize how amazing Jesus is, how he bridges such a great gap. So that's important to understand as we begin looking at the sacrifices and kind of practically why this was important for the Israelites and why this is important for us as it points us to Jesus. So you've got this need for perfection. How can we overcome this issue? The sacrifices that point to Jesus. This first one is the laws for the burnt offerings. So here's how you accomplish the whole burnt offerings. This is, the word actually in Hebrew is going up offerings. And so how they accomplish this, why it's called a whole burnt offering, is when you bring an animal and you're going to have it all go up to God. So this is kind of a symbolism of like full dedication. That's kind of where it's going to. I am all in this, for the animal. It's the animal's all going up there. Is all being burned up, right? Or for a human, I am fully dedicated. So this is representing the human being fully dedicated to God, and which that'll be important later on when we get to Judges to understand what the real meat of it is, I guess you could say. What's going on with the whole burnt offering is that it is all going to God. The hide is given to the priest, but everything else, like there's nothing to be eaten by the priest, by the person giving the offering. All these other sacrifices, we're going to see that this part goes to the priest, or this part goes to the person who did the offering, or this part goes. Different stuff is split out among different participants, but here it's all to God. So it's a full, everything is for God. And so that's what the point of this sacrifice is. It's the going up offering. It all goes up in smoke, as opposed to these other offerings. So notice, though, as we look through chapter 1, when you see the guy putting his hands, it says the guy puts his hands on the animal that he's brought, and then he himself has to kill it. You really get an idea, like if you have to be the one to kill this. Like you have to see, this is what I deserve, and you have to do that yourself. But placing the hands on is kind of representatively saying, I'm laying my sin on this thing. I'm identifying with this animal, and this animal is taking my place. And then, he gives, after he kills it, he gives it the animal to the priest, and they chop it all up, put it up all on the altar, burns up. They burn the whole thing. It's a whole burnt offering, totally dedicated, all 100% of that, all the meat in there is dedicated to God. And you also notice it has to be a perfect animal. It has to, what that means by perfect is it doesn't have spots on it. It doesn't have a gimp leg. It doesn't have any kind of things where you would look at that and say that's a defect. You have to give the best. We saw that all the way back with Cain and Abel, how Abel gave the best of what he had and Cain gave some of what he had. You gotta give the best. God deserves the best. And of course, the best sacrifice we can give is Jesus is the best sacrifice, right? He's the perfect one. Also, perhaps significant is the fact that it does say it's a male without blemish, or a male that's a perfect one. So there are some sacrifices where you can have a female of the animal, but in this instance, in this whole burnt offering, it's got to be a male. And I do wonder if does this have to do with specifically with the fact that it's again pointing to Jesus, though you certainly can have, we'll see in the book of Judges, you definitely have one woman who, what she does points us to Jesus, so it's not like, it's not where like women can't point us forward to Jesus. You definitely see that in the Bible, but perhaps this has to do with, again, as we talked about before, this covenant headship, this with being in the covenant, you have that guy who's the representative, right? You had Adam. He was a representative for all of humanity, screwed it up, all humanity screwed up. When Lot was going to have, when he was going to be taken out from the city because it was going to be destroyed, his whole family got to go with him. When Noah was going to be saved from the flood, his whole family got to go with him. You have that head of the family, that male head of the family, that with them the rest of the family goes. And so there's kind of this representation here, and perhaps the male being required in this case has to do with the significance of it needing to be a male because of the symbolism in there. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I just noticed that in this case it is a male, and that's kind of my best guess as to what perhaps that could be. If you've got other ideas as to why in this case it needs to be a male, again, some sacrifices, it won't need to be. We'll see that later, which might be like the fellowship offerings and stuff, which are not for sin, whereas this, a lot of times, this is showing the total dedication, things like that. Is there a reason why in some cases it's got to be the male without blemish versus being able to be, a female? So you got any thoughts on that? Comment below. Love to hear about it. But that kind of is the summary of the whole burnt offering. That's the first of a number of sacrifices that we'll look at. We're going to look at grain offerings, at peace offerings, at sin and guilt offerings. There's a number of different kind of offerings that kind of have different purposes. This one is this full dedication to God. It is used in a number of places in the Bible. Just a couple examples. We have the covenant renewal in the book of Joshua before entering a battle in 1 Samuel. So we're going to see, you can kind of see from time to time as we read through the Bible, oh, there's an example of that, and now we know what that is. We'll see that with other offerings as well, where something else will be offered. Sometimes they'll offer a sacrifice, and they won't necessarily specify, but if you know these, here's the process of this offering or that offering, then when they describe it, then you say, oh, that sounds like it's that offering. And so that can be helpful in that way as well. Last thing we're going to do is read Hebrews 10, a couple verses in Hebrews 10 before we close out. So Hebrews chapter 10. Hebrews is great for showing us like how everything points to Jesus. It's just super clear on that stuff. It's a great book. And so Hebrews chapter 10, we'll start at verse 4, and we'll just skip to verse 14 just to see these two things that show us the need for Jesus, how these sacrifices, they themselves did not accomplish this filling of the gap, this helping people go from unholy people to being able to be in the presence of a holy God. So verse 4 says, "For it is impossible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sin." Okay, so this is saying, and you can read the whole chapter, that this is what they're doing in Leviticus. It never actually took away sin. It pointed to the one who would. In verse 14, "For by a single offering, he," that's Jesus, "has perfected for all time those who are being sanctified." Now, sanctified is being made holy. That's the same word there. So when you are sanctified, that's you're holied, I guess. You're made holy. Sanctified is that being set apart for God. So the blood of goats and bulls, well, those sacrifices keep going. It never really accomplishes the salvation of a person, the taking away of their sins. But it points to Jesus because he's the one that one time, once for all, boom, done. So Whether you're in the Old Testament and you're trusting in the one who's to come, or you're in the New Testament and you're trusting in the one that already did come, that's what these sacrifices are pointing to. So that's where we're in today. Next time we'll look at the grain offerings. Thank you for watching that video. I hope that it helped you learn a little bit more about the Bible today. And if you'd like to continue to learn more about the Bible, then we have plenty of other videos on the channel. And if this has been helpful for you, then you can always let me know by subscribing to the channel. And hopefully I'll be able to continue to help you learn even more about God's Word. Thanks.